Good evening, everyone. For those utilizing ASL interpretation services, our two interpreters are online and you can pin their video. Instructions are in the chat and they are labeled as CCRB ASL and ASL interpreter slash sign nexus. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Arva Rice. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the interim chair of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I would like to call the CCRB's April Public Board meeting to order. Would the rest of the board members please introduce themselves, starting with AU?
Good afternoon, A. Hogan, City Council appointee.
Frank Dwyer, Police Commissioner Designee.
Northern Mayor appointee, Brooklyn.
Herman Merritt, City Council appointee from Brooklyn.
John Darsh, Executive Director. I use he, him pronouns.
Police Commissioner appointee.
Good afternoon, Joseph Puma. I go by he, him pronouns, and I'm the City Council appointee from Manhattan.
Good afternoon, Michael Rivadeneira. I am the City Council designee from the Bronx, and I hail from the Bronx.
Thank you. And we have two board members who are joining us virtually. John, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good afternoon, John Siegel. I'm one of the mayoral appointees.
Good afternoon, I'm Kevin Jamat. I'm a mayoral appointee from Queens.
Have a motion to approve the revised February board meeting minutes.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask, were there any changes to the minutes? Any changes to the minutes? Okay. All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the CCRB February minutes are approved. I also need to ask for a motion to approve the March board meeting minutes, but are there any changes to the March board meeting minutes? Any changes, amendments to the March board meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, can I have a motion for approval of the March board meeting minutes as well?
I move the approval of the March board meeting minutes.
Thank you, and can I have a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the March board meetings are approved. In March, Executive Director John Darsh and I testified before the City Council 3 times. First, to share CCRB's data and NYPD's SRG unit, and second, to present our budget testimony, and third, to comment on whether CCRB should have direct access to body-worn camera footage and the exemption from sealing statutes. In each of these testimonies, we advocated for a greater budget, direct access, exemption from sealing statutes, and highlighted other issues facing the agency. The City Council seemingly agreed with our testimony because last week they published their response to City Hall's proposed budget. While the Office while the Office of Management and Budget proposed that the CCRB should cut nearly 1 million and 22 headcount, the City Council recommended adding 6.5 million to CCRB's personnel services budget and 1.5 million to CCRB's other than personnel services budget. This would allow the board to hire 92 positions. Our reasoning for the additional budget and headcount is largely due to the expanded powers and jurisdiction the CCRB has received in recent years. In 2021, the City Council passed a bill giving the CCRB the power to investigate racial profiling and bias-based policing. The CCRB also voted internally to change the rules that define our jurisdiction. In 2021, we voted to begin investigating untruthful statements and sexual misconduct as abuses of authority. In 2022, we voted to implement the charter changes regarding profile and bias-based policing and investigate body-worn camera misuse as an abuse of authority. These changes are all key steps towards improving accountability in New York City and ensuring all police misconduct is addressed. Yet with these expanded powers, some of which are charter mandated responsibility, comes the need for more budget and staff. These new powers have added hundreds of cases to our docket a year. Last week, the OMB announced its third peg, asking us to cut 4% on top of the 3% they asked us to cut in January. We were very clear that even the January cut would prevent us from being able to fulfill our charter mandated responsibilities with the efficiency the public deserves. This new cut would be detrimental to our agency. It would require a further cut of 22 positions, bringing us below the charter mandated requirement. Even OMB acknowledges that these new cuts may result in a decline in the agency's quality of work. OMB recently approved our request to post job openings for the June investigator class, but as of today, we have no money to hire those people, disrupting our entire investigative unit. These cuts deny the important part that civilian oversight plays in public safety. For people to trust in the police, they must have faith that there is a system that holds police officers accountable and responsible for misconduct. The CCRB is the independent civilian voice in the police disciplinary system, and failing to adequately fund the CCRB shortchanges public safety in the city. We thank the City Council for recognizing the CCRB's importance and needs, and we hope City Hall will give us the same support. We will now hear from Executive Director John Darsh on our other agency updates. John?
Thank you, Chair Rice. He suffered a tragic loss on Friday night. On Friday night, one of our own, David Dweck, died in a motor vehicle accident. David has been a dedicated colleague and passionate civil servant with the CCRB for the last 6 years. As Director of Operations and Budget, he was instrumental in advocating for the CCRB, pushing this agency forward and ensuring we have the budget and resources to do our job effectively. If any of you have been regular attendees of our board meeting, you probably recognize David. Despite his title, he was never above doing the grunt work necessary to make these meetings work. And a lot of people here are going to miss him. We're going to miss him deeply. And the thoughts of the entire CCRB community are with his wife, Jessica, and their daughter, Leora. There's been some confusion about our concurrence rate with NYPD and the hundreds of cases closed due to a statute of limitations dispute. Last year, the NYPD closed over 300 cases, stating that the agency delivered those cases too close to the SOL for the department to properly review the cases. Despite the fact that half of these cases were sent to the NYPD with 20 or more days prior to the SOL, the NYPD closed them without any review. This means there was no judgment made on the merits of the case, and hundreds of officers who the CCRB found committed misconduct were not held accountable. What has not been made clear is that the NYPD could have reviewed these cases and assigned training to correct these officers' behavior, even though the SOL expired. Training can be assigned even past the SOL, as it is not recognized as an official form of discipline under state law. The department could also have served charges in these cases, which stops the clock on the SOL, and given themselves more time to review the cases as they see fit, and then assign whatever level of discipline the police commissioner chose. Instead, the department chose to close these cases without any review, without any attempt to hold the officers accountable. Today, the CCRB published its 2022 annual report, which includes detailed data on the cases closed last year. You can find updated concurrence rates, both including and excluding the cases closed due to SOL disputes. There is been some confusion around what caused the delay in these CCRB cases. Some have been blaming the CCRB's process. The vast majority of these closed cases came from 2020. Cases were delayed in part by the pandemic, but they were also delayed by difficulties in identifying members of service, refusal by members of service to participate in remote CCRB interviews, and delays by the NYPD in turning over key evidence. In June of 2020, the NYPD had a backlog of over 1,000 body-worn camera footage requests. Body-worn camera footage requests for the 2020 protest cases often came back with false negatives, telling us the footage didn't exist when it later turned out to exist, and false positives, sending us footage that was not relevant to our investigations. This created extra work for our investigators and unnecessarily slowed down investigations. This is not a matter of figuring out who to blame for what happened in prior years. This is a problem going on right now. The CCRB has over 100 racial profiling investigations in which the NYPD rejected data requests for items, both data and other records, that are needed for profiling investigations. The data and documents we are asking for are the same that NYPD recommended its own investigators use when looking into cases of racial profiling and bias. Some cases have been on hold for over 6 months now, which is why the issue of how the department treats short SLL cases is not academic. The CCRB is still in negotiations with the NYPD regarding the data needed to investigate racial profiling and bias-based policing cases. We began these discussions last summer in order to avoid delays in investigations. Yet over 8 months later, we have not received the data or records we need to conduct these investigations. The CCRB submitted over 100 requests for data and documents, all of which have been rejected. This is why it is so important for the agency to have direct access to NYPD data. And this is why the SOL issue is not a history lesson. It is a crystal ball. I want to update the board on the complaint about the killing of Kowalski Trowick by 2 members of the NYPD. This board substantiated allegations against Police Officer Thompson and Police Officer Data for the incident. Last month, the police commissioner rejected a defense motion allowing the disciplinary trial to proceed. That trial is scheduled to begin on April 24th. Just a few housekeeping notes. We're asking that people keep their comments to 4 minutes today. There are 2 investigators here with us tonight. Emma Steidehar and Ethan Waterman. Oh, Ethan, now I see you in the back. So if there are folks, here who wish to file a complaint, we'll have you talk to Ethan and Emma so you could do so. So there was a person in the front row who wanted to file a complaint against the police commissioner. So, sir, the police commissioner is not considered a uniform member of the NYPD. So if you file a complaint with us, we will forward it to the department or the Department of Investigation, depending on the nature of the allegations. And I want to thank the staff for all their hard work despite the trying times we're going through. And I want to thank the members of the public who are here today and who are joining us online. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions of our executive director?
Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Just a question and apologies if it was mentioned during your report out. In regards to PEGs and how it's impacting the staff, does that also include the racial profiling unit? I know that OMB had approved hiring and we were staffing up. So I just wanted to know sort of what is the impact of these new pegs on that particular unit, knowing that there is a peg impact on the investigating unit as a whole, but specifically racial profiling.
I think we were able to onboard 2 people into the racial profiling and bias-based policing investigations unit prior to the second peg being announced. But essentially, it is going to cap it at those people. And even if members of that unit leave the agency, I do not know if we will be able to replace them. If I could just add one thing, Madam Chair. The agency will not have to lay people off as a result of these pegs. We will be able to deal with it through attrition and other cuts to services. But I just want to reassure staff that if you are here, that we are not going to let you go because of the peg.
Any other questions for our executive director? Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will have a presentation from our Director of Outreach, Mr. Jahai Rose.
Thank you very much, Chair Rice. Thank you all very much for attending. My name is Jahai Rose. I go by he, him pronouns. I go by the pronouns he, him. I am the Director of Outreach for the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Just want to share some details about the agency. Bear with me for a moment while I share my screen. Yep. Can you see my screen?
Now we can.
Wonderful. Yep. So the Civilian Complaint Review Board is the nation's largest independent oversight entity over the largest police force in the country. The CCRB investigates, mediates, and prosecutes complaints of misconduct against members of the NYPD. Now, this agency is governed by a 15-member board, some of which you have met today. 5 seats are appointed by the New York City Mayor. 5 are appointed by the New York City Council. 3 are designated by the New York City Police Commissioner. 1 is appointed by the New York City Public Advocate. And the chair is jointly appointed by the mayor and the city council. The CCRB has the ability to investigate specific types of allegations which fall within the jurisdiction FATO. F stands for force, A stands for abuse of authority, D stands for discourtesy, and O stands for offensive language. The acronym, as I mentioned, FATO, is a helpful reminder of our jurisdiction. Just a few details about the Right to Know Act. The Right to Know Act is a law that went into effect in October of 2018. It impacts interactions with the public and New York City police officers, which include, under certain circumstances, officers should identify themselves by providing their name and other information, such as their rank, command, and shield number. With some exceptions, officers should explain the purpose of the interaction. If an officer should inform members of the public of their right to say no when asking for their consent to search their person, property, vehicle, and or home. That's also under certain circumstances. And officers should, under certain circumstances, offer a business card with the officer's information, which explains how to submit a comment and or complaint about an interaction with an officer. Civilians can request this information, this business card, in all interactions. This is a copy of what the business card looks like. There are various ways to file complaints with the Civilian Complaint Review Board if you witness or experience police misconduct. 2 of the easier ways are to file using our website. That's nyc.gov/CCRB complaint. You could also call the CCRB's hotline at 1-800-341-CCRB or 1-800-341-2272. You could also reach, and remember, if you do see footage of misconduct, either on social media or in the news, you could feel free to file a complaint. You do not have to be there in person. You can file a complaint with us on social media. Typical handle is CCRB_NYC. Other ways to file a complaint to the CCRB include calling 311. You could also visit the CCRB at our office at 100 Church Street on the 10th floor in Lower Manhattan. You could DM or direct message the CCRB on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. As I mentioned, the handle would be CCRB_NYC. You could also send us a letter in the mail at 100 Church Street, 10th floor, New York, New York, zip code 10007. You can file a complaint at a local police precinct. It does not have to be the precinct where the interaction took place. Officers are required to accept CCRB complaints in any precinct. You could also request a complaint form with a postage-free envelope. If you'd like to request a outreach presentation for your neighbors, organizations in your community, friends, family, you can feel free to reach out to the CCRB's outreach unit at outreach@ccrb.nyc.gov. You could also follow the CCRB on our social media platforms at Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you very much, Chair.
Do any members of our board have any questions of Jahai? Any questions? Okay. We will now enter the public comment portion of the meeting. We will begin with those joining us virtually who will like to make a comment, followed by those who are joining us in person. For those joining virtually, can you please use the raise your hand feature? And we're asking you to please keep your comments to 4 minutes. Yahira, would you please call on the first person?
Thank you, Chair. We'll be hearing from Chris Dunn.
Can you hear me?
Dunn, we can.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I want to start with a moment of silence for Pat Lynch as he moves on to the PBA afterlife. And I want to express the hope that the new PBA leadership will take a more constructive approach to the CCRB. And I would love, Arva, to see the CCRB make an effort at a reset in dealing with the PBA. I recognize that's a tall order, but the PBA should not be the sworn enemy of the CCRB and vice versa. So I'm hoping the new leadership will have a different approach to the CCRB. I certainly hope it'll be more representative of the police officers, male and female, and the vast racial diversity of police officers than the PBA leadership has been for the last 20 years under Pat Lynch. So let's hope it's a new day. John, you mentioned the issue about the bias-based policing. And many of us are very concerned about the fact that the police department is not only not cooperating, but is actively obstructing the CCRB's work in this area. And I am curious, and I think Frank is the only police department rep who I see. I am curious what the police commissioner reps on the CCRB are doing to help deal with this problem.
Christmas Brown is here.
Okay.
2 representatives present. There are 2 designees present.
So does either of you want to offer any insights about what you might be able to do to help deal with this problem?
2 comments. One is the police commissioner recently testified before the council and offered some of her thoughts on this. The second is when I have discussed these matters with the legal folks in the police department, they express legal concerns that I think are best worked out by having their legal folks and our legal folks at CCRB work on it together, because they're more qualified to do that than I am.
Okay.
Want to add anything to your comment? Okay. And did you have another comment or question?
I just had one other thing I wanted to raise, which is John's comments about the cases that were dismissed, ostensibly for statute of limitations issues. And John, I think it's an important point that you make that the department could still require training because training under state law is not considered to be a form of discipline. We have always taken the view that training is not a form of discipline. When we calculate disciplinary rates in CCRB cases, we do not include training. And I think this may be a moment, John, for the agency to reconsider the way it is categorizing training outcomes in its reports, which I believe, but you'll correct me if I'm wrong, the agency treats as a form of disciplinary outcome when counting department dispositions.
When the board substantiates allegations against a member of service, we consider training to be a type of discipline that the board recommends, and we do so when it is deemed by the board members to be the appropriate level of discipline under the matrix.
Okay, well, I think I understand that. What I'm saying is, I feel like that is resulting in kind of an overstatement about the actual discipline being imposed by the department. And to the extent that the department is actually trying to avoid imposing training in the name of statute of limitations, I think the agency would be advancing its interests if it, as does state law, stop treating training as a form of discipline. It should not be reporting when it reports discipline imposed by the department cases that result only in training. Those are my comments, Harvard. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, no, so noted. Thank you so much for your comments, Mr. Dunn. As always, very appreciated. Yohaira, can we hear from the next speaker?
Next, we'll be hearing from Arcelia Cook from the South Ozone Park Civic Association.
Well, and thank you for this timely meeting. This is the first time I'm actually on this meeting. But I did have a cause of concern that if we are talking about with the CCRB board and they make their recommendations and then it goes back to the police department to decide what form of discipline an officer should receive, how is the public to have faith in that if they if it's going back to the police department to make whatever recommendations form of discipline? Shouldn't that be done from an independent agency or organization to work in conjunction with all agencies that's involved with that to make sure that justice is really being met on all angles for all individuals? The other thing, I noticed that in the reports, some of the reports for the precincts, you may have individuals who may have maybe one allegation, one or ranging from 1 to maybe 33. Now, I know to me, one allegation is really not alarming to me, but someone who has 33 allegations, 22 allegations, and you only have one substantiated, I mean, how does that come about and how can you really discipline someone? Because it seemed like the oversight is lacking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cook, for your comments. I'll take the first one because it's the easier one and leave the second to our executive director because it's a little bit more complicated. The first one, the board and the CCRB has maintained that final disciplinary decision should rest in the independent body of the CCRB rather than in the police commissioner. And so we have advocated for that. We do believe that would have a higher level of accountability, but the fact is that it still remains with the police commissioner at this time. And so we ask individuals who believe also in that to make their voices heard. But we have been fairly consistent in the fact that we do believe that there should be an independent body who's ourselves who should be responsible for final disciplinary decisions. John.
So when the agency considers complaints, there are often multiple allegations against multiple members of service, and we look at the evidence and the law and the patrol guide for each individual allegation. And if we are able to determined by a preponderance of the evidence, which is more likely than not that misconduct occurred, the board will substantiate the allegation and then recommend discipline based on that allegation and what is recommended in the NYPD's discipline matrix. So just because someone has allegations against them does not mean that those allegations are misconduct. And the board is very quick to either not very quick, the board is very careful to examine the evidence and the law. And if it determines by a preponderance of the evidence that misconduct occurred, it substantiates the allegation. If it determines that the conduct alleged occurred, but was within NYPD's guidelines, that doesn't mean it's good police work, but it meant that it is appropriate under the law and the NYPD's own guidelines, then the board will determine that the conduct was within guidelines. And then if there are allegations and the board can determine by a preponderance of the evidence that those allegations did not occur, it will unfound those allegations. And unfortunately, there are times where despite all the evidence that we gather, including body-worn cameras, we are unable to reach a determination by a preponderance of the evidence. And in those cases, the board will let people know we are unable to determine what happened. And that is the basis for our allegations and how our investigations work.
Thank you, Ms. Cook, for that question. Yahira, who's next on our list?
That concludes the virtual public session. We would like to also thank the Office of State Senator Roxanne Prasad and also the Office of New York State Assembly Member Inez Dickens' offices for attending this evening.
Thank you. If you're interested in making a public comment, we're going to ask you to please line up behind the podium. And as a reminder, we're asking you to please keep your comments to 4 minutes.
First time. My name is Michael Myers. I'm the president and executive director of the New York Civil Rights Coalition. Excuse my mask. Every time I come into a public building, I have to wear it. I am very, very congratulatory to the executive director of this agency and to the chair. You have patience, that unbelievable patience, the patience of Job, dealing with this damn police commission. And I use the word damn. She responds to not you, not to the public. She thinks she's better than you. She thinks she knows better than you. She thinks she knows more than you. She takes your reports and puts them in the garbage, so to speak. I don't know if she reads them. I don't know if she understands them. But I'm telling you now, I'm furious. So I congratulate the executive director and the chair of the board for tolerating that such nonsense on the part of the police commissioner. And I want to know why do you do that? Is it because she's black? Is it because she's a woman? Is it because she's new? Is it because you're giving her a learning curve? This woman is not possible to be taught. She doesn't have a learning curve. I tell you now, as the time runs, that I do not respect this person. She needs to be hounded out of office. You need a call, and I say you mean the board of the Civilian Review Board need to demand her resignation. Otherwise, she's not going to have your respect. She's not going to pay attention, any attention to your report. And I look to the police commissioner appointees for your help. I'm not here to condemn you. You're brand new. You're not. But you've been sitting here and you've been listening to these reports as I have listened to the reports. I came down here because the phone system doesn't work. I tried to get involved. I tried to contact you. The phone system doesn't work. So I am saying to you that you have got to demand her resignation. You gotta. Because you're our agency. The public's agency. and she has disrespected you. She ignores you. She has contempt for you, which means she has contempt for us. And I'm shocked that the mayor, who some of you elected, puts up with this nonsense. That he identifies with her more than he identifies with you, the people's representatives. So in conclusion, let me say, aside from you demanding her resignation, and I suggest that you do that, whatever happened to that public meeting we were looking for with the police commissioner? Did she ever come down? Did she ever talk with you? Did she ever say, I will have a meeting in May or June or July? Or is she just not answering you? Now, if she's not answering a request for a meeting that will be held in public so we can see her face and hear her nonsense. Because we want to see her. We want to hear her nonsense and let her know that she doesn't report just to you, she reports to the public. And we, the public, are furious and fed up with her nonsense, her idiocy, her contempt for a board that the people got appointed through legislative change of the city charter. Finally, let me say this. You have so many complaints with CCRB. And as I listen to the executive director, people are not paying attention to them. The police commissioner, what are you supposed to do when she has contempt for you? When she doesn't take your recommendations that you have duly come to consideration? What are you going to do about it when she has such contempt for your recommendations? What do you want the people to do, the public to do about this police commissioner when she refuses to meet with us? I'm furious. And I know that a public letter to her is not going to do any good because she's a police officer. She represents the police department, not you and not us. And it makes me angry that the mayor of this city puts up with this kind of nonsense, this idiocy on her part.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Myers, for your thoughtful comment and your feedback and your anger, which I completely understand. It is a challenging time for us here at CCRB. As you know, our concurrence rate has gone down with the current administration, with this current commissioner. We are committed to making sure that the requests that we submit are given to us and have gone through a number of different external and internal strategies to help to put those into place. And this is the mechanism that we have, the Civilian Complaint Review Board, in order to push forward and push for accountability. And so we'll continue to push as hard as we can.
She doesn't resign, then you want to resign.
Okay.
You got to have accountability.
All right.
If she doesn't resign, everybody in this room should resign. Maybe you'll get the so-called mayor's attention then, maybe.
That is certainly your opinion. So and thank you for that. Like I said, I understand the anger, I understand the frustration, and I don't know if any other members of the board wanted to weigh in as well. No? Okay. All right, we can move forward. John, did you want to say anything? I don't think that it's that people are not angry. I think it's that we're all working hard in order to deal with the hand that we're dealt, right? And in order to push for accountability in the greatest ways that we can possible. And so we've been given extended powers, which we pushed through the city council. The city council has been very supportive of our efforts. And so based on the additional powers that we have, we've been trying to push the NYPD to be responsive to it. And you're right, they have not been responsive. And people can say that's disrespectful. People can say that they can call for my resignation as a result of that. And that's fine. You can do so. But we're within the boundaries that we have, using the levers that we have of power in order to help to move forward the additional powers that we have.
For a meeting? Did you ever answer you?
We have not requested a public meeting with the police commissioner. We have not made that request. The board decided that that was not a direction that we wanted to go into at this particular time. We do have ways in which we can directly communicate with the NYPD and with the commissioner herself. And so we've had those conversations, but we have not requested a public meeting.
Is there anyone else here who would like to make a public comment?
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a public comment? They should come to the podium. And if not, do we have any old business to come before the board? Any old business? All right. And I will answer the question of, do we have any new business to come before the board? I do. I have one item of new business before the board for consideration today. Last year, the City Council amended Section 440 of the City Council to allow the board to initiate complaints against members of service. Prior to this charter amendment, the CCRB could only investigate an allegation of police misconduct if a member of the public contacted the agency to file a complaint. Now, if the CCRB becomes aware of potential misconduct that needs to be investigated, it can commence an investigation even if no member of the public comes forward to initiate a complaint. The charter allows the board to appoint agency employees to carry out its power to initiate complaints. CCRB Rule 1-14, which was adopted by the board in September 2022, authorizes the board to delegate this power and appoint employees to exercise that power. Before the board for consideration today is a resolution that, if adopted, you all have that in your packages. Before the board for consideration today is a resolution that, if adopted, would delegate the board's authority to initiate complaints and appoint the CCRB's executive director to exercise that power. I will now read the resolution into the record. Whereas by passing Local Law 24 of 2022, Local Law 24, the New York City Council amended paragraphs 1, 2, and 5 of Subdivision C of Section 440 of Chapter 18A of the New York City Charter. And whereas Local Law 24 amended paragraph 1 of Subdivision C of Section 440 of Chapter 18A of the New York City Charter to permit the Civilian Complaint Review Board, CCRB, to receive, investigate, hear, make findings, and recommend action upon complaints initiated by the board against members of the police department that allege misconduct involving excessive use of force, abuse of authority, including bias-based policing and racial profiling, discourtesy or use of offensive language, including but not limited to slurs relating to race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, and disability. And to investigate, hear, make findings, and recommend action regarding the truthfulness of any material official statement made by a member of the police department who is a subject of a complaint initiated by the board. And whereas Local Law 24 amended paragraph 5 of Subdivision C of Section 440 of Chapter 18A of the New York City Charter to authorize the board to appoint such employees as are necessary to exercise its powers, including but not limited to the power to initiate complaints in accordance with paragraph 1 of Subdivision C of Section 440 of Chapter 18A of the New York City Charter. And whereas on July 13th, 2022, the board held a public hearing and accepted public comment on proposed changes to the rules of the CCRB, including rule changes that reflected the amendments to the New York City Charter made by Local Law 24. And whereas on September 14th, 2022, the board approved the adoption of the amended rules of the CCRB, which included the amendment of Rule 102 jurisdiction to reflect that the CCRB's jurisdiction included complaints initiated by the board and that the board is, quote, authorized to appoint such agency staff as necessary to exercise its powers, including but not limited to the power to initiate complaints and fulfill its duties, unquote. and the addition of Rule 1-14 Board Initiated Complaints, which provides that the board may, quote, may delegate its power to initiate complaints to the Civilian Complaint Review Board Chair, Executive Director, General Counsel, or Board Member Panel, subject to any conditions deemed appropriate by the Board. The authority delegated to the Chair, Executive Director, General Counsel, or Board Member Panel to initiate complaints may be revoked by the Board, end quote. And whereas the adopted amended rules of the CCRB were published in the City Record on September 22nd, 2022, and became effective on October 22nd, 2022. Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 440 of Chapter 18A of the New York City Charter and CCRB Rules 1-02 and 1-14, the Board hereby delegates its authority to initiate complaints and appoints the CCRB's Executive Director to exercise that power. And be it further resolved that pursuant to Section 440 of Chapter 18A of the New York City Charter and CCRB Rules 1-02 and 1-14, the Board may, upon a majority vote of its members, revoke this delegation of authority or appoint additional or alternative employees to exercise its power to initiate complaints, end quote. Do the board members have any questions? Do the board members have any questions? All right, seeing none, I'd like to ask for a resolution to, ask for a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
I move for the adoption of Civilian Complaint Review Board Resolution delegating authority to initiate complaints to the Executive Director.
And can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, approve by voting yea. Aye, sorry. And all those are opposed. Okay, the resolution is approved. All right, I'm going to move now that we break into our executive session. The agenda for the executive session is the board will deliberate on 2 full cases, receive an update from the executive director on training, and the general counsel will update us on litigation. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, the April board meeting of the CCRB is adjourned. Thank you.